So our next speaker is Chklovski, founder and CEO of Technovation. She'll give us an inside look at the short and long-term benefits of addressing inequalities in AI opportunities. Tara, welcome to Emtech Digital. Floor is yours.
Hi, everyone, and I'm really thrilled to be back here. I did my master's here in Boston, so this is lovely. So I run Technovation. It's the world's largest technology entrepreneurship competition for girls, and I want to share a 5-step plan for empowering 25 million young women technology entrepreneurs, and I want to make a case for why the world needs them. So every year, the United Nations Development Program publishes the Human Development Report, and this year in January, they published this graph showing how COVID has pushed us into the red. And we know it, we feel it, but there's another group of people, of young people, who are particularly impacted. And if any one of you has a young teenager at home, you'll see how they are concerned about the world that they are going to be entering as adults, because they're inheriting a world with tremendous challenges, but the formal school systems are not giving them the tools by which they can actually tackle these incredibly complex problems. But these young people are also a source of tremendous hope for us, and in particular, girls. So there is so much research and so much evidence to show that girls' education is at the heart of sustainable development. When you educate girls, they lift communities out of poverty. When you educate girls, their families are healthier. And this is something that some of you may know, but I didn't, that educating girls is the 5th most effective strategy for reducing carbon dioxide emissions, even ahead of solar panels, even ahead of electric vehicles. There's an organization called Project Drawdown, and if you want to take a look at that, you can see why that is so. And of course, like, empowering women results in societies that are more peaceful, able to respond from pandemics and shocks much easier. And the scale of this potential is that we have 900 million teenage girls in the world. And if you have a teenage girl, you'll realize like how awesome their ideas are. They are revolutionary, right? Because they're thinking ahead, they have tremendous energy, optimism. I myself see my ideas becoming calcified, right? And you need young people to kind of break the way you think. And so if you think about, we know that educating girls has all of that research-based evidence to make societies better. So those are foundational skills that schools are providing them. But what if you amplify that, give them digital skills, teach them to use AI to tackle problems that they're seeing in their world? What if you add to that they have the abilities to launch their AI prototypes and ideas into the market? And finally, give them sort of the strong self-efficacy, agency, and purpose. You have a supercharged packet right there. And so that's what I feel today. We have absolutely all the technology, the tools, the infrastructure, and all the research we need to think much, much more courageously than we have. And not just sort of think of girls' education as like basic literacy, but bring the most cutting-edge tools to these young people, because the world needs them. We have failed at tackling all these problems. And we are sending missions and vehicles to Mars, so we can definitely tackle this problem. And so how do we get there? And I will share some of the secrets and nuggets that our organization has been working on, and this is just one idea. So Technovation is based on self-efficacy theory and also the adolescent's brain, like how does the science of how an adolescent's brain develop? So here are 5 things that are key to appealing to teenagers, regardless of which culture they are, regardless of what language they speak. Because number one, they are looking for independence. The program needs to, it actually does not work if you force a program during school onto a teenager. But if you give them the option to join a program or a competition, they love that. Give an option to work in teams, they're addicted to one another, and they're really searching for purpose. All of us are searching for purpose in a world where you see so many challenges. And the fourth point is that they have to be connected to mentors who have high expectations and believe the best of them. I mean, we all do better when people believe high things of us. And lastly, we're not just sort of a brain, we are also a body filled with chemicals, and so you need programs to be exciting, to have drama and adrenaline, and competitions are a really good way to do that. So if you have these 5 elements, guaranteed your program can be global, it can scale, it can have huge impact, lasting impact. And that's what the Technovation program is. It's a 12-week program where mentors work with girls, work in teams to find a problem that aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals, and create, earlier it used to be mobile apps, now it's AI-based prototypes. And here are some examples of what girls are tackling around the world. One of my favorites is the one on the top right. This is developed by a team of girls in Kenya in the first year of COVID. So girls who became pregnant due to school closures were not allowed to go back to school. So these girls created an app and a safe forum for girls to continue learning, actually launch their businesses. And many, many more. We have thousands and thousands of apps that girls have been creating. And I was telling the Spotify person earlier that one team from a non-English speaking country actually made an app to help girls realize which songs had lyrics that were disrespectful to girls, and to sort of have their own playlist that was more empowering. I thought that was very interesting. So we have scaled, we've reached roughly 1/3 participants across 120 countries. And I want to share this video. It gives you a little snippet of what the program looks like. We started running an AI curriculum track 5 years ago, and we've collected a ton of data on what works to bring machine learning tools, curriculum, and a mindset to groups as remote as a refugee camp in Somalia. It was just mind-blowing to see what interest people have in learning about how the AI on their phone works, and how people don't bother to think that these type of communities could care. So let me play this for you.
This whole program for me is like a way to go ahead and teach people that AI is a tool that can make your life better.
The AI Family Challenge program is a multi-week course that immerses youth and their families all around the world in understanding AI, what it is, how it's used, and think about what problems in our community could AI solve for us.
The more we know about artificial intelligence, the more impact we can make on the community.
And here are some of the ideas that girls are tackling. Fake news is a very common one, as well as helping elderly, helping people with hearing abilities navigate the world around them. So far, girls have created roughly 1,000 prototypes that use all sorts of machine learning to tackle problems. And we see that girls are definitely learning about these technical tools, building their self-efficacy. But one thing that we did not realize, because because we've been running for 10 years and many of our young women are now actually in the workforce, is the longer term impact of this program. And this video, I won't play this, actually Google developed this video about a young girl who participated in Technovation. Her parents actually did not want her to go for the program, but the chapter ambassador kept encouraging her. Finally, they relented, let her go. She made a really cool app to sort of protect homes from burglars that won a regional competition, got featured in the newspaper. Her father is actually a cab driver and was the sole income provider for the family. And then because of Technovation, she actually started to go to more hackathons in her community. She became an intern at Google, and now she's a software engineer at Tata Consultancy and is the main provider for her family. And that we are hearing more and more stories of this where if you provide this very carefully scaffolded program, but encourage girls to tackle some big problems with powerful tools, you absolutely change their life trajectory and that of their families. And her mother now is a very strong advocate for young women going out and working. And so we're seeing sort of social norms being changed because you empowered a young woman. And we have roughly 50 young women now who are working at Google. Google was one of our first investors. And it's interesting to see that there's actually a time bound to this, that it takes about 10 years for a corporate partner to actually see the impact of the investment. It may seem like a long time, but honestly, I mean, this is, we are scaling, and that's why we have a large plan. This is the long-term data that is giving us a lot of hope that we're on the right track. We have roughly 76% of our alumni now pursuing STEM degrees. They're going into STEM careers. They're coming back as mentors. And they credit Technovation for being that first door that opened up a whole new horizon, because it was the first time somebody said, we care about what you think. And their ideas were actually really cool. So the program is working. It has scaled somewhat, but I also think that there is a huge potential because young women, we need their diverse perspectives. And so this is a 5-step plan. It's not necessarily for us, but it can be something that a group of partners can come together to do. So number one, I think we need much better curriculum. So currently the state of sort of curriculum around sort of SDGs for youth is very, very limited, very basic. For example, the climate stuff talks about the 4 recycling hours of recycling, very, very basic. So I think there's room for us to develop a curriculum where youth are given real roadmaps for each of the SDGs that says, okay, if you're thinking about reducing hunger, it's a logistics problem. Think about what are some ways in which citizens can actually think about tackling this. Second, of course, raising awareness, challenging governments, especially those where the gender inequality index is high, to empower girls to tackle problems using AI. 3 would be to establish a grassroots network. Online courses are great, but they do not change the world, especially not for girls, and especially not for learners who are not, who need a lot more guidance and support, and this is a long journey. If you've taught yourself an Emma course, I have done it, I've lost interest after the first 3 hours. You know, I need somebody to keep me motivated. Number 4, there's room for a lot of transparency in the nonprofit sector, especially in the education sector. So I think this is where if there's a strong platform where you say, if I'm a donor, I supported and empowered a program for this community, I would like to see the apps that the girls created, what happened to them, what happened to the girl after a long period of time. And so I think there's room for that kind of full circle of impact to be made available for the donors and for partners. And lastly, I think I learned the hard way that you cannot just think about doing a K through 12 program, because the social norms and stereotypes are so strong against young women and especially minorities that the support systems need to be made longer. And so there's room for a large global alumni AI incubator. And the way we measure success has been historically increases in resources, agency, self-efficacy, interest. But I think I want to challenge educators and nonprofits to say, we got to go deeper, and we say maybe it is increasing the financial capability of that young woman, because that means the support system would be provided, would have to be longer, and then you're really holding yourself accountable that it's not just enough to give a course and hope and pray that she does well, well, but really that is, as a society, we have to come to make sure she has all the skills and the support to be successful. And lastly, I think there's room for us to actually start to measure the ripple effect of how empowering minorities and women to become leaders, how that changes communities. So this is all research-based metrics. Number one, if you increase social capital in a community, it makes it more resilient. If you encourage young people to volunteer, that community is stronger. If you build technical capacity, of course, the community is more resistant to shock and more open-minded. And so I just end by saying we need more empowered women to lead us to a world where both people and the planet can thrive. So thank you.
Really, really inspiring, really insightful stuff. Yeah, why don't you sit a little closer to me? So, first of all, it's really good to see you in person this time. Oh my gosh. You know, I mean, compared to 15 years ago, we have a much wider global internet access. There's more people with smartphones than ever before, right? Add in big data, mass movements to virtual learning, it would seem that we have all the tools at our disposal. Your company notwithstanding, right, to equip underserved communities for success. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I'm curious, from your view, why we haven't seen that change?
I'll just say, I think, honestly, it's a lack of courage, and I'll start with myself, too. I think we set up pretty reasonable KPIs every year, the ones that we think we can hit. And I think after, in December, I just realized like the problem of inequity and also sort of missed potential is so large, and that our incremental growth would never get there. But I think it comes down to a fear of failure for the leader, where you don't want to put your name behind something really large and go full force. But I honestly think that there was one question that somebody put to me: is this worth risking everything you have? And I was like, yes. So if this is if you have a solution that can make such a huge impact in the world, then why aren't you doing that? And the answer was a lack of courage. And if it's just a lack of courage, then of course you can. Because, I mean, who cares? Nobody's going to remember me. But of course, if you actually do the work, I mean, that's awesome, right? Yeah. So it's worth trying.
Yeah. You know, there's this mentality in tech that we've seen time and again, right, that involves moving fast, breaking things, right? But we're talking about people here, right? And it would, in terms of investment, that takes patience. So I guess in speaking of company leadership, you know, where do they come into play here in terms of trying to reduce that friction against the system?
Yes. So we are in the nonprofit sector, but we are mostly funded by corporations and the tech industry. And I know the importance of quarterly reports and how sort of the annual returns are needed. And CSR is such a side thing. But I think that tech likes to think that they move fast, and I would disagree. I was thinking the iPhone came out in, like 10, 11 years ago, and it is still cool. And so when we were doing mobile apps in 2010, a lot of the corporations were like, why mobile? And I was like, okay, it is going to be important. We still have apps on our phones. So, and of course, the AI community doesn't need to be told that. So I think the move fast, I would rather say the more important thing is figure out the problem that is really going to make a long-term difference in the world and go for it. And time doesn't matter, because you're going to do great things.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to make sure I don't get mobbed in the winter garden. I'm going to go to the audience now. Who has a question? You on the right.
Just lift and say your name.
My name is Ali Karimi. Have you gone to move the women to the politics? We need some of those women in the politics. We've seen some of the women in politics in Europe. They've done great. I think you should move some of them.
Absolutely. And I have 3 young women in my mind. One woman who's an alumna, I think she's going to be the president of Mexico one day. Another woman, I think she's going to lead Cote d'Ivoire. Another woman, she's going to become the next president of Kenya. I know these young women, and they're young today, but they will be leaders.
I will tell my daughter to contact you.
Yes, absolutely.
She just finished the schools, and she's going to work for the Justice Department. I'm going to make sure she contacts you.
Yeah, she should be a mentor.
And the other lady, adore her a lot. She used to work at MIT CIO conference, Jeannie Ross. I heard she retired, but she went to the law school. I mean, women, they need to be in government. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'm going to jump over to online. Are you doing any work in Afghanistan?
We were, yes, we have a chapter ambassador there, so.
Nice. I'm going to go back to the floor. Question?
Hi there, I'm RJ Haneke from Toronto Wireless. So one thing you mentioned in your talk was a carefully scaffolded program. I was really interested to hear a little bit more of the details of what that entails.
Yeah, so it's video games do this really, really well, right? Like, so make it very easy to start. There's sort of multiplayer. There's a lot of feedback, and so I think it really is about that. There's a lot of theory around it, this self-efficacy theory that, and it's not just for education, but it's also for any kind of motivation change. So I call it like the 4 E's to self-efficacy. So number 1 is exposure. You need role models. Number 2 is the experience, which is like easy to start, lots of awesome feedback. People will not try new things if you know you're not going to be successful. So this is where mentors are key, and that is sort of the expectations part of it, where your parents need to be part of this. Usually parents are always left out of coding programs, and that they're a very key part of what we think of sort of the holistic approach. And the last part, I call it like the energy of the whole thing, because it can't be just like reading or coding online. That's not enough. So there has to be that social element. So if you have all 4 elements, you have a very, very powerful program. And the ways that I was outlining those 5 things, that's what we've learned how to really address it to teenagers. And but then the hard part is you got to figure out how to do it logistically, globally, and that's where we rely on volunteers and mentors and a very strong, thick network of people support. So even though we're all online, we only survived COVID because of the people that were on the ground who could immediately go and see what are the girls, what they need on the ground to get them through the program.
My turn. We've talked in the past about how if companies want to be serious about this work, they have to put their back into it, right? So, I mean, I'm curious, like, beyond line items on a budget or a potentially toothless DEI leader or a checklist that says, oh, I have this many women doing this many things at company X, right? How can company leaders really think more boldly, more broadly about inclusion?
I think being patient, and it's not that much of patience, but 5 years, I would say, is enough to actually see the returns of your investment. And you'll see it in, of course, that your community really respects you. Number 2, you'll have a very diverse workforce. Number 3, your employees. So we heavily rely on industry partners for mentors. And 60% of our mentors don't know how to code. They're learning about AI. They're learning about using AI to tackle climate-related things, both things that their company CEOs have told the company people to do, but they don't actually know what it means. And so this is a great way for them to actually get their hands dirty while feeling amazing. It really builds a sense of purpose. So there's sort of 3 returns at different time levels. But I would say the biggest return would be that your workforce is changing and is becoming very diverse and innovative, and that'll take roughly 5 years. And that's worth it to wait.
I can't disagree. Let's jump back into online questions here. We've got one from, I apologize if I butcher your name, Ajana at JP Morgan Chase. She's curious about how do you help change the fixed mindsets of families in highly conservative societies, right? Create an environment that's conducive to girls' education.
But And that's a great question. And we work so much in countries where the gender inequality index is high. I think the story of Padma Priya is the one where a chapter ambassador physically went to the parent and talked multiple times. But now it's getting easier because incoming girls see Padma Priya's example, and the fastest way to convince anybody is to say your daughter is going to have her earning potential is going to be so much higher. And that is the fastest way to change anybody's mindset, I have to say. Especially, because if you are a software engineer anywhere, you're earning way more than what you would normally earn. So,
another online question here from Abhishek. What have been the challenges faced by your company, right, to create interest in young girls towards AI?
Social stereotypes, even for girls. Even it's rare that a girl will see a flyer about a program and say, "Oh, this is for me," because just social norms are so strong. It's always the case that a teacher or a mentor has to go to the girl and say, "I think you're going to be awesome for this program," and so that right there is our bottleneck. But I think it can be tackled by media and campaigns. I think and now we have so many incredible young women who are leaders in their countries. Amplifying their stories is also a very powerful way to quickly get that.
It's really fascinating stuff. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but Tara, thank you so much.
Thank you.